Hey YouTubers, it's Tamara Blodgett. Thanks so much for tuning in, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'm going to be doing a series of what it took for us to get down as expats and live a foreign lifestyle. That's a dream of mine since I was very young. I didn't know it would be on this level, of course, when I was ruminating about it when I was a teenager, but it has become something that I really enjoy. And I advocate it to anybody that can do it or wants it bad enough, it's passionate enough about it to go for it. Now check out my merch shirt, guys, from Amazon. Family She-Devil, all right? It personifies any woman that's got any family that she's fierce over and she wants everybody to know about it. Now, purple doesn't show up the best because of my writing and stuff, but it's kind of subtle, but kind of humorous too. It's like, don't mess with me. Yeah, just a shameless plug for my own stuff, but I wear my own stuff. Every t-shirt I make, for the most part, are ones that I would wear. And let's recap what we talked about in the first episode of talking about foreign living. We talked about how we bought a house in Alaska mortgage-free, and then we put a first mortgage, well, finally, because we were custom home builders, I wasn't, Hubs was, and every time we moved, every 3 or 4 years, we would gain equity from that prior house and we'd apply it to the next one until we were totally paid off with our house and remodeled and everything else in Alaska of 2005. We had a house that was, held all our kids, everything was great, and we were perfectly fine and happy at 38 and 39. But I had told Hubs I really wanted to be in a warmer climate. I wanted to be somewhere that had a beach or an ocean that I could access without, traveling for hours in a car to get to it. And I just wanted that lifestyle. I love that beach lifestyle. It's an ideology I've had since I was young, as I mentioned in episode 1. I touched on that. So for me, it was super important for that. And he promised me if we moved to Alaska that I would have that. So somehow he made it work, which somehow was taking out a first mortgage on our paid for house to buy the $48,000 ruin we ended up buying. So we went ahead and we bought that house, and this is an odyssey into the adventure of what it took for us to make that house work. And let me tell you guys, there was so much adversity for us doing it. We had to want it so bad. Our first trip, as I mentioned to you, was in January of 2007. We were there a week. We bought the house. We'd been married. That was our anniversary week, 20 years. The next year we came and we lived in a condo with our youngest son while we farmed out the older boys to people we could trust in Alaska for that month, and Hubs got stuff started. He hauled in 7 tons of brick on his own, with this clamping mechanism, and he hauled it into the house. He had the roof demoed, and then ENA, a historic preservation place that can't be bribed, not that we'd try because we always follow the rules because we're just that boring. But they were like, no, you have to have tejas, which is a hand-done, really long terracotta tile, which you think of instinctively as being the roofing for Spanish-based housing, which it is. We had to put that roof on, and we couldn't afford to put wood vigas in again, which are the wood beams on the roof. So we put in cement ones, and we used our vigas as molds to make them look like they were wood. So the cement vigas looked like they were wood because we couldn't afford to get, real wood ones. So we went ahead and did that. But then we had a carpenter, and we hired him. We hired him to make furniture out of the wood vigas so they would not be lost. We used everything that we could. We had a wardrobe made, we had nightstands made, we had a little table by the front door made that held things like, our water money on top and a little lamp and stuff like that. We had a huge dresser piece made. I'll take photos of some of those things that we still have. Some, one piece was lost in a sale, and that's okay, guys. They're things, but I still have hung on to the nightstands and the dresser and some of the other things, and it's a wonderful memory of a time where we had so little money that we had to rob Peter to make Paul, and we had to make furniture out of our roofing beams and things, and we were very ingenious then, and then some of the beams that couldn't be used because they were too flawed, we just Hubs planed them down in the back patio, which was like a courtyard that separated, an open courtyard that separated the casita from the main part of the casa. And a casita is little house, okay? So we had our master bedroom in there and our master bath. And it's where we were finally able to, we came into some money. It was like $10,000, which seems cheap now, but we could barely afford it then. So he's out there in the middle of the courtyard with the sawhorses and a planer, and he's planing each viga that we couldn't use for furniture. And then what we did was we hung the wood vigas that were planed down with, really, they were thick. They were like 2.5 inches thick by however long wide, and all random lengths. So everything was just cut down where there were wormholes or problems or whatever. We just cut those things off. We planed the problems off. Anyway, he stuck them up on the wall, all in different kind of like shelving pitches. And then we put our mementos and our kids' pinch pots that they made and photos and all that stuff up on those and use those as shelving, because we had 14-foot tall walls and ceiling height, because this had been a place that had been built in the 1870s. And so ceiling height was important so that the heat would rise and keep the building cooler. And so that was by design there. There was no air conditioning 130 years ago, 150 years ago, there just wasn't. And so that was a device, an architectural device, to make certain that a house could be as cool as possible. And since it was a row house, it was long and dark, okay? And Hubs put in huge glass block. He had those put in. And so on the roof, it was like a pyramid, an Egyptian pyramid, but at the top it had this square glass block. And so he had those in the bathroom, what was the main bath, the bedroom, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend that. And all down the really super long corridor. I'll have pictures in here for all that. And he did that to allow light to enter the house. Otherwise, it would have just been a long, dark tunnel. It would have been. We could have even stood, we had 3 in the main front room that you came into in off the street. We had 3 in there. We could have had 4. And then I would have taken out the ones we had in our bedroom. I would have taken those out, because they do wake a person up if you're sensitive to light. So I would recommend against that. But it was a clever idea. And we had to have them resealed a couple times, because of course the workmanship isn't always great here. I mean, it's a real hodgepodge of guys that are willing to do what they say they're gonna do, and they implement things right, to the ones that do something like what they say they're gonna do. Sometimes they show up on time, and then you get a slipshod job, and then in a year or two, some things are leaking, or the air conditioner tubes have been tied into the sink, which allows sewer gases to escape, and oh yeah, there's stuff. There's stuff. So that first go, we had a guy named Marvin. He's since passed, and we really liked him a lot, but he wasn't really great about staying on top of the building process. And so Hubs came with me and the 3 boys in tow, all homeschooling, and we rented a house for $750 right behind our casa, because we wanted to be really close. And it was a lot of money for the time, and electrical was separate. And so we could barely scrape up the money to get the $800 is what it took to be in this little house that had 1 bathroom only upstairs. It was a lot, guys. It was an adventure. And because I wanted to be in Mazatlan so badly, I overlooked a lot of things, a lot of unpleasantries, and a lot of staggering hiccups because I wanted it. So Hubs told me later, he was like, we had to tear up, before we got there, Marvin had to tear up, our supervisor of the construction, tear up the entire patio, and we had to spend money that was for the house build, the house remodel, on pouring new concrete, because there was a catacomb of rats carrying on underneath the patio, and they were just diving up whenever they felt like it, because the gal that owned it before us had an outdoor kitchen there that was added in the 50s into the courtyard. So she was out there cooking all the time, and it didn't bother her. She just shooed them away. I mean, they were like pigeons to her. She didn't care, and I really cared. And so Hubs tore the whole thing up and put down new concrete with a stainless steel hand custom made drain, too heavy for them to bump up, get through any of it. And so that stopped that problem. So before we got that, at least that was done, right? We got there and Marvin said, oh, things are ready to go. They weren't. Hubs got there and everything was raw concrete and nothing had been done, and he wanted to tile the floors, and he had people coming through and wrecking his tile templates, and subcontractors that didn't understand his desire to be frenetic, on time, scheduled, sequenced, go hard in the paint. They didn't understand any of that. They just come flopping by with their concrete bags and wreck his templates for tile. I mean, he was fit to be tied. It was super tough. And he was mad at Marvin because Marvin hadn't told him where they actually were in the construction because he hadn't been paying attention. The roof hadn't been done correctly, so it didn't drain correctly. It cost us a ton of money, and we had to keep having Ramiro come out and redo things and fix things until we just decided that he actually didn't know what he was doing and he couldn't fix anything better than what Hubs could do. So we just stopped having him come. We were like, oh, forget it, right? Took a sense of humor. If I was to come to Mazatlan right now at 56 years old, I don't think I would have stayed. I would have been like, what is going on here? I would have been that much more set in my ways. I wouldn't have been able to live the dream. I wouldn't have been able to figure it out. I wouldn't have known Spanish at all. And I didn't then, but I was younger. So that makes a huge difference. And I will just take a brief break and digress and say, if you don't know the language and you're older, I mean, over 50, over 45, in there, you might rethink your plans. I don't know that you can be malleable enough or transition smoothly enough to accept the cultural differences that you will need to in order to get through a project of this nature. Now, if you've got buckets of money and you've got an incinerator in the corner of your house and you're just tossing cash in there, you can pay this to be done over and over again and hire somebody to be your super and all that stuff. But if you're on a budget and you need to do a lot of the work yourself and you have some of the skill set, Hubs had a lot of it, I had some as well, then tune in. If you're younger, you can still do this. In fact, if you're under 40, I really recommend giving it a try. I really do. That's wonderful. But we came, everything was raw concrete. We have pictures of our dogs in the bottom of the kitchen cabinets just kind of trying to escape the mess and the noise and the construction dust. Our kids, the workers, everybody, okay? It was tough. So he was able to get the house barely to a livable level when our rental ended at the end of January. And then we moved into the house and it was like camping. We were on the bus route that year. We didn't know that it alternated because we were too early in our livability there and process. We didn't know that the bus route alternated year to year. We found that out later. But first year we're in there, we got the old doors on the front and they got this much gap and the noise and the exhaust fumes and everything are coming in the front. The kids are all set up in cots. That was 3 guys. I had bought some used furniture that was solid cedar because I knew the termites would be dreadful. And the reason I knew that is because we had lived in Hawaii for 3 years when we were very young and I understood the climate was similar. So I didn't buy any wood that had any particle board. They'll come in and they'll feast on it. You need to have one of Coxley, cedar, or the really old antique pine, black pine. That's it. Otherwise the bugs will come in. They'll just come in like you invited them, like it's a banquet invitation. Terrible stuff there. The kids were out in the front. Hubs and I had the only bedroom, and then there was one bathroom for everybody, which was fine because Hubs had done that. He worked like a fiend. And I might just add, he had broken his neck and had neck surgery just 3 or 4 months before this. And he believes that the reason that his nerves came back to life and did okay was because he had to do tile work and it was very repetitive and he used this whole part of his body. He had tremors in his hand and everything that went away. So he forced himself, and this is just who he is, guys. This is just who he is. But he forced himself to do all that tile work, and it was extensive. He tiled all the floors in the main house. He tiled up to 5 foot high in the bathroom and the walls, and did all of it in travertine. He tiled the floor, the shower basin, up the walls, like I mentioned, and then the vanity itself. Okay, the whole thing was an extensive tile job, and it was beautiful. I have photos of that, of course. Right? He had just had neck surgery in November, and this was February we were talking about when he was doing the tile. And so he did it in January. He got the whole house tiled in 1 month. We moved the kids in on top of the construction dust, threw them in the front room. We took the bedroom, and we all used the same bathroom. And then we had like a little TV room in the very back of the house that before that, it led out to the patio, which was just kind of a bare courtyard. It was just concrete for many years. And then we had the kitchen with a stove and a fridge. And then this is a separate topic almost, but once we finally got in there, then we had 3 months where he and I painted everything and continued to do little things. He was out in the, My God, you guys. And then when he was out with the sawhorses doing the vigas and stuff, and he was planing them down, and he was cutting off all the wormholes and bad ends and decayed issues with the vigas, he was out there sweating, right? Because it was work and it was warm and all this. And he got bit by a mosquito and he got dengue. I have never seen anyone be that sick and live. So our guy, the king of the household, was flat on his back on the bed, and he had the breakbone type of dengue. So he got the dengue where it feels like someone's crushing your bones of your face and your body and stuff. It was awful. And I was too new and knew about 15 words of Spanish that I didn't know what to do. And we had a neighbor that lived 6 doors down, Raquel, and she was making 3 or 4 of our meals a week for a great price, and I'll go into that in a second. But she was like, I can bring a doctor by, and we didn't have money for that. I was like, either he stays and he gets over it, or we take him to the hospital. And she was like, don't take him to the hospital. And I just didn't know what to do. Now I know I could have just had a doctor come in for like literally 60 pesos, which is about $4. And at that time, and the doctor would have been like, well, here's something to help with the pain until he eventually survives, because he did. It is fatal. It's got like a 20% fatality rate. So that was another thing that happened. And he kept rising up in the bed every day, a couple times a day, like a reanimated corpse, saying, don't let the kids get a mosquito bite. Be careful of the mosquito bites, because he was delirious with a fever. Anyway, that happened in February of March of that year. We have a picture of Hubs. We have a picture of him 3 weeks after the incident on our anniversary, and he looks ashen. He still wasn't good. The dengue, the worst of it was for a week, but then after that, he went into a big I'm trying to recover mode, and it took him like 3 weeks. So he's been a little PTSD about mosquitoes since then, right? He's just like, oh my God, I don't want that. So that was absolutely horrible. It was. And I was not yet working at that stage. I didn't start working full time until our youngest son was about 13 and a half. And that puts it at about 2010. That's when I started writing my first book that was published, Death Whispers. I had already written Blood Singers in 2007. That had been finished, but I was too uncertain about how it would be received to publish it. And I went ahead and published Death Whispers and started writing it in the Casa. And so I didn't actually have a writing career when I first moved there. For the first 3 years, it was just Casa life, and we had enough money to pay for our meals to get made and everything from Raquel. And she had kind of an alternating meal plan. And I think in those days, it cost me for four or five meals, I think it cost me 1,000 pesos a week. And so that was roughly about $85 or $90, because we were like 11 to 1 or 10 to 1, 12 to 1 right in there. So it was almost real equal with 1,000 pesos would have been $100, or 1,000 pesos would have been $85 or $90, for instance. And we paid that. And it was so worth it. And we also paid to have boy number 4 and 3 go to Mexican school here. And that was super tough, because we were paying for the meals, because I just didn't want to cook. I didn't even want to traverse foreign cooking, because in those days, if I can digress a little bit, all the substitutes that we were used to in the States, they weren't there. We were like some of the only white faces in the neighborhood, which is how we wanted it. But when we went to the Lay grocery store, it was kind of like their Safeway. It was super primitive about substitutes and parallel foods. It was super tough. And we were living with 3 kids that were the meat and potato American types. Our youngest was pining away for peanut butter. And when I finally found peanut butter, he was like, what is this actually? They call it peanut butter, but it's not, he'd say. First world stuff, literally. So Raquel would make those meals, and we would pay, and she'd truck them down to the house, and she'd have a couple of huge platters I had provided for the meals. And I would pay her every week, and then I would give her a 10% propina, which is a Spanish word for tip. And I learned pretty fast how to speak, and I am going to go by her house again this year. I usually go by once a year and just visit and see how she's doing. She's 11 years older than me, and I don't know what she's doing now. She's probably got a small pension. Maybe she's still cooking. I don't know. I just want to come see her. I made her a couple aprons from scratch, just to sort of, give her gifts and everything, because she's had a very hard life. And I tried when I could to provide things to make that a little easier. I wasn't always the best I could be with her, and I didn't realize until later, and I got some experience kind of more about the culture and how to handle things. And she still forgave me for a lot of my faux pas. How should we say that? Anyway, and she was great. And she was kind of my maestra in the beginning. She was my teacher, because I'm quite a chatter. And she put up with that for like an hour a day for a couple of years. And she's the one that would very carefully correct my Spanish and help me. And I consider that early teaching with her to have gotten down the fundamentals of Spanish for me. Of course, that being said, our sons that went to school had Spanish down in about 3 months. Yeah. Number 4 had first went to a bilingual school when he was in 6th grade, and then then a couple years later, he went full-time to the high school while his brother was a senior and went full-time there. And then I homeschooled him because I had a really great principal in our Alaska school that knew what I was trying to accomplish. I was trying to socialize the kids, get them used to the Spanish culture, get them liking it as a normal way of life, get them speaking Spanish, get Spanish friends. All that happened. Hashtag goals again. I wanted them to be diverse and different thinkers with a wealth of diversity. And I don't mean it in the way that they're bantering about that now. I wanted them to be more well-rounded humans and have a tapestry in which to think about later and have a precedent for something that was different, unusual. I wanted them to have what I had not had. And it wasn't that my parents didn't do a great job. They did in many respects. It's what I wish I would have had. And so providing that for them, even though it was later in life and they just got kind of a taste of it, they didn't get really immersed. The younger one did kind of, but it was so important. And now they speak Spanish well enough that number 3 is used as the Costco translator to large degree when he's on shift, okay? And I have a funny story about that. And this is all this is a story. So you understand sort of context, right? You understand that I'm storytelling here about the things that happened in sequence in our life here in Mazatlan. And then the younger one, he's an IT engineer, and the number 4, and he's oftentimes, whenever he talks on the phone or something, if their Spanish guy was absent, he would take over, and all the people from Peru, Chile, Colombia, all the different Spanish-speaking countries would say, "Oh, you're Mexican." And of course he said, "Well, no, I'm American." But then they'd be like, "Come on." And he'd explain why he sounded like he had a boca fuerte de Mexico. The reason he has a really clear Mexican mouth is because he was under the age of accentless potential. He was under 12 when he first came here and was exposed very early and understands how the accent should sound. As a matter of fact, when he clept into senior year Spanish 4 without any Spanish before in high school, clepping into just means that he took a test and they said, "Yeah, you're too advanced to be in 1, 2, or 3. You're right, get to go right into 4. They didn't understand him in the class. They were like, "What? What did you say?" So he got proficient at putting an American accent on top of his Spanish as like a spin so they could hear him. The teacher knew right away when they all greeted her, because it was all Spanish speaking in 4. You couldn't get away with any English speaking. He just said whatever phrase that she told the whole class to say, person by person. And he said it, and she's like, "Oh, wow, you learned your Spanish in Mexico. You sound like a native." And he's like, "Huh." He also was performing something called passive listening. That's where you go by when somebody's talking and you know what they're saying, but you're not paying attention. I have that happen rarely down here, but sometimes I will come by and I get the gist of what they're saying. That just started happening this year, 17th year, 17th season. Of course, I'm not living here full time. I'm taking large chunks of hiatus from speaking Spanish, but I continue to build on my Spanish, and I want to talk about that also. It might be a different video. But I want to keep the core of the episodes in what it's like to live foreign. So that was what number 4 gained. He's bilingual and accentless. Now, he says he gets rusty if he doesn't speak it that often, but he picks it right back up again. Now, number 3 does have just a touch of an accent. And he was 12 or 13 his first year here, so he missed that perfect cusp. However, he did marry a girl that's bilingual. She speaks Spanish like a native because her mother was from Los Marcos, which is south of PV, Puerto Vallarta. So that's why she speaks so well. So they recently went and visited her family down south, then came up here and visited us, and Bird got right back to where he always started. He understands it better than me, and he can speak Spanish way better than I can. And that's okay. I wanted that for them. Our number 3 was only here for his senior year. And he does understand Spanish a little bit, but it's very small compared to the other 2 boys, of course. And he works on it when he meets somebody that speaks Spanish, of course, and he's had some Spanish-speaking people. He also works at Costco. 2 and 3 both work at Costco. And he's been able to get by with very basic stuff, and they appreciate that. Not to the advanced level that Bird can and Sweet Pea. Bird and Sweet Pea, 3 and 4, they're in it. They're in it, and it was excellent. So getting back, coming full circle to the remodel, we got the majority of the house finished that 3rd year. So the 1st year was the purchase of the casa. The 2nd year was just getting the basics done. The rat haven sorted, the concrete done, the roofing done, the brick for the extra walls because hubs put in. We're a row house. We're essentially 20 feet wide by 100 feet deep. So he didn't like the shared wall situation for a lot of reasons. And I was just like, oh, extra money, why, who cares? I said to him, and he's like, it's my ignorance there. He put in walls that took up an additional almost 3 inches on each side. We lost a half a foot of depth because of it. It was the best thing we ever did. Best thing we ever did. He ran it through the whole house, and suddenly we had less noise and less concerns over privacy, water infiltration, bug infiltration. I mean, the list goes on. It was smart, but I hated it. So he got a bunch of brick delivered, and he was out there all day with this thing that grabs a certain amount of brick, like 12 or 15, and it just, you hike the handle up and it clenches the ends, and then you can just haul it in. And he did that all day long. Oh my God, I just can't even imagine. He's like 40 years old, right? He did it, moved 7 tons of brick or whatever it was. An incredible feat, I thought. And he got that all loaded in the house, and then he had them put up the walls, the second walls. I'm sure they were like, whatever, dude, we're just gonna do it. And he got some stuff started. He got the floor jackhammered because it had been, like I'd mentioned in the last video, this concrete slab floor that had like scoring to look like tile. And then it had, when plumbing was put in probably the 50s or 60s, they just bore a trench through the whole house. There was this unsightly new concrete thing. It was so bad, you guys. It was so bad. So he had that all jackhammered out, and then he re-poured concrete to his specifications of fall and quality, and he was there to do it, and he was happy he was. And we were there a month, living in a little condo that was kind of across El Centro. It was actually by the beach, but it was affordable. It was like $700 or $650. It was better than that house. And then he'd go over there every morning. He'd take a Pulmonía, which is an open air taxi. Another video, whole nother video. They're pretty much indigenous to Mazatlan. But anyway, he took an open air taxi, which is like a golf cart, over to the house every day. Okay, he'd take it over there every day, and he'd be gone until the sun set, and then he'd come back. And then that's how our month was. And I want to just mention he got a horrible barfomatic flu from the neighbor next door, the condo that was adjunct to ours, and had to be flu-ridden and sick for 3 or 4 days. I mean, the poor guy. But the 3rd year we came back, the one I told you about, was when we had the 3 kids with us, and we stayed in the house behind our casa, and that's when he got the majority of, you know, the tile set and all the things done in 1 month just to move us in. And it was like camping that year, you guys. It was like camping. He and I slept in a double bed, and the kids slept in cots and this other thing in the front, and it was a lot, but it worked out. And even after all that, the flu, the dengue, the rats, you know, all the things that we had to do, it was so worth all of it. And I'll talk about the kids' schooling and all the things that happened after the initial house build, and what it was entailed then, what the costs were like. And I've already gone into the food. And those days we had a Burger King there too, and we would go to Burger King and Panama Restaurant as well. And then 1 day a week I would cook something. It makes me sound so spoiled and awful. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and subscribe and like it, and tune in for episode 3, where I talk about even more stuff and get really in depth in the schooling and the costs and the transportation and how much things cost at the grocery store as compared to now. And that's very important too. Love you guys. Thank you.